Good evening. Today is Monday, August 17th, and we're here seated as the board of NCPRD. And Gary, why don't you take the roll?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair Bernard.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader. Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Yes. All commissioners are here.
Here.
Thank you.
Well, let's please join us in a pledge of allegiance.
Okay. I pledge allegiance. Okay.
There we are.
There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic
for which
for
it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible,
with liberty and
justice for all. All right, so Mary, you could throw up the agenda.
Here we go. Call the order.
All right, so looks like on this we have public comments first, huh?
Actually, I'm first, Chair, so
Okay.
want to clarify the agenda for tonight. So the first section will be public comments for the public. That is for items that are not on the agenda. So for members of the public who would like to speak about the proposed bylaw changes to the District Advisory Board, you will have a chance to speak under discussion item, where there also will be public comments there. So we ask that for this first section of public comment, you only speak if you have an item that is not related to the bylaws. If it is related to the bylaws, would you please wait for the discussion item number 3? There also is a public comment section under that discussion item. I just wanted to clarify that. There's been some confusion prior to this meeting. Before we go into public comments, Chair, we had talked earlier, you agreed that Commissioner Savas, as the board liaison to the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, could make some opening comments for the meeting tonight.
Hey, go.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, so I just want to just kind of set the stage a little bit as we broach this. I had asked for this meeting in February, and we were scheduled to have this meeting in March, and it was basically an update as to what was happening with the district and the DAB. And that meeting was canceled because of the COVID outbreak, and for a multitude of reasons, and thinking we could be open to the public and having meetings both electronically and in person. That was canceled. So here we are today, meeting virtually. So I'll begin here. So back in 1990, during the time when the district was formed, the ballot measure stated that there would be local control comprised of advisory boards. Key word is plural, boards, plural. And it would be composed of local residents. There are documents that describe 5 geographic sub-areas. Milwaukee is and was and is still one of those sub-areas. Each sub-area would have its own parks board made up of local residents and supported by staff. The DAB was to be comprised of representatives of each sub-area, and essentially, delegates of each sub-area parks board would be advising the BCC, acting as the NCPRD board of directors. 4 of those 5 sub-areas no longer exist. The exception is Milwaukee. Their sub-area, so to speak, is still in full form. The 4 others were unincorporated. Each sub-area was to be granted $500,000 to $800,000 in 1990 dollars. The purpose of those dollars was to acquire land to build the specified parks in the measure, which were listed also in the 1991 and 1992 documents following the November 1990 election. Some of those specified and promised parks do not exist today. They were not built. But from what I can tell, the unincorporated areas have not received the money promised, the parks, the representation, or the staff support via those sub-areas. Milwaukee has lived up to their end of the deal and has fulfilled the parks, the staff support, the advisory board representation, and the staffing for both. Today, and at least the last 10 years, the disparity is obvious in the district. Every regional facility that is in the district today is either within the city limits of Milwaukee or contiguous to Milwaukee or both. The promised regional facilities and some local neighborhood parks in the unincorporated areas were never built. Since the board of directors last year directed the DAB to work on the bylaws to seek balanced representation in light of Happy Valley's potential departure, Milwaukee has made its position clear. At the very first meeting of the DAB, and I believe every meeting, I stated my concern and preference that the elected officials would not be voting members of the DAB. This conflicted with Milwaukee's position. Through many meetings and discussions, the Milwaukee representative and I both compromised and agreed to one voting elected official from the city and the BCC if that person from the BCC lived in the district. The DAB voted unanimously in favor and the work continued. About a month afterward, unfortunately, politics came into play, which ultimately derailed the process and completion of the bylaws. The last two meetings were essentially dominated with elected officials imposing their beliefs, their skills, and an organized effort to overturn that decision that I spoke to earlier. Ultimately, that was unsuccessful, and here we are today. Chair Bernard, at the very last DAB meeting, he has publicly acknowledged this, I appreciate that at the last DAB meeting, he basically blew it up, his words. In my opinion, the staff proposal in today's packet is flawed and likely to keep the unincorporated areas in a compromised and powerless position. Think about it this way. If you do not honor the bylaw work of the DAB, then how will anyone have confidence their work is worthwhile and their recommendations are respected in the future? And I'm speaking to the DAB members. The absence of representation from some area advisory committees boils down to the deck being stacked as it has for about 20 years. This is just not right. On the bright side, there is some good work that the DAB did. I think that is noteworthy. I am proud of, and the DAB should be proud of, is that we recommended creation of an appointee review panel that would evaluate applicants and provide extra consideration in scoring the applicants if they were of low income, disabled, youth, senior citizen, people of color, and LGBT community, if so, and to help advance more diversity on the board. We also recommended an extra voting seat for the most severely underserved area to ensure those areas, the children and families residing there, would get a strong voice at the table. The staff proposal removed that seat. That's unfortunate. And I'll stop there and just allow the meeting to continue, and I'll have comments later on. But I just thought I'd just kind of give you an introduction and give everyone else an introduction of where we are and where we came from. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And so where do we go from here? Oh, citizen communication. So first, the part that doesn't have anything to do with anything on the agenda. So Dylan?
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, Chair Bernard. I'm Dylan Blaylock with Clackamas County Public and Government Affairs, and I'll be coordinating both public comment now and later on for comments general to the District Advisory Board bylaws. As Administrator Schmidt alluded to earlier, if any attendees would like to provide a general comment related to NCPRD business, not related to the District Advisory Board bylaws, which we'll get to later, you can do so and make your general comment now by utilizing the raise hand feature on Zoom. If you're on the phone, and I see we have a lot of phone call-ins, and you want to give a comment, you can hit *9, and that lets me know that you have a comment to make. And Chair, I do have at least one general comment email to be read as well once the Zoom and the phone calls are done.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any hands right now for general comment, so I will go to the email that we have received. The email is from, pardon me, Mitra Anushiravani. We'll say that, Mitra Anushiravani in Jennings Lodge. Hello, North Clackamas Parks Recreation District Board of Directors. I'm a resident of Jennings Lodge and part of the identified underserved area of the NCPRD. With 3 kids under 8, our family has a lot of interest in local, easily and safely accessible parks. As it stands now, our nearest parks are in Oak Grove or Gladstone, Often we even drive to Oregon City or Sellwood for fun parks with large play spaces and multiple recreation options for the kids. Neither Oak Grove nor Gladstone parks are safely walkable, and we either drive or pray for the best and cross McLaughlin at Jennings with our bikes. And while this isn't specifically an NCPRD issue, my property backs up to the Boardman Creek wetlands on the opposite side of the entrance. I cannot safely access the eventually opened park, literally in my backyard, unless I get in my car and drive a block because there is no safe pedestrian or bike passage for adults, let alone kids. Our family has relative privilege amongst Jennings Lodge, and we can drive or ride good bikes with good helmets. Many in our area don't have those options and therefore are left with very little in terms of accessible green spaces. The park's imbalance is a manifestation of inequities, and it hurts those most with less means, unable to access workarounds by traveling elsewhere. I have no doubt that the Board of Directors recognizes the lack within Jennings Lodge and within the greater unincorporated area. My hope is that moving forward, the Board of Directors takes steps to level the playing field in terms of fair representation within future NCPRD leadership by keeping the Board of Directors citizen-led instead of allowing elected officials on the board. It changes the power balance and allows unfair advantages in advocacy. Our area has clearly lacked fair advocacy, and this step is a corrective step toward leveling the park's imbalance and ensuring fair representation. Thank you for your consideration, Mitra.
No one else? All right.
And then one last call for any attendees. For any general NCPRD comment, please raise your hand now. Oh, we did get one. So one individual, Dave Seward. Dave, I'll bring you over. Again, this is for general NCPRD comment that is unrelated to the bylaws. We will be talking about the bylaws in a moment. But Dave, if you want to give your comments, please unmute yourself. There you go. Provide your name, your area, and keep your comments at 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Seward. I live off of Cottonwood Court, which is off of Hill Road. I just have a question for the Parks District, or Scott, basically. When the district decided to unload the complex at Hoodview, we were told that there was going to be other ball fields built that would be adult size. So far, we've seen absolutely nothing that even comes close to fitting this bill. So I'm just wondering, is this something that's going to happen, or is this more of whatever?
Aspirational.
Yes.
Chair, would you like me to address that
Sure.
quickly?
Sure.
I'll be quick. Dave, thank you for your comments. So as the board knows, we did the transaction with the North Clackamas School District where we sold Hoodview Park in exchange for the 3 schools that we acquired. However, we also have in place a use and management agreement with the school district for NCPRD to continue to use and program those ball fields at Hoodview at least through 2025. So we do recognize that we need those adult fields. Mr. Seward is correct. And in the meantime, we are exploring our options of where we will be able to replace those adult play ball fields. So we have in place at least through 2025 a use agreement with the school district to continue to utilize the fields out at Hoodview. Of course, unfortunately, this summer that is a non-issue because we're not able to play our usual adult leagues and so forth. But going forward, we'll have that use in the next at least 5 years.
All right. Thank you very much for that comment and question, Dave. Okay, Chair, I see no other hands that are up for general comment.
All right.
Oh, wait, one, I'm sorry, one just shot up. Would you like me to do it? All right.
Sure.
Okay, the next person, Jan Carruthers. Again, this is for general comment related to NCPRD, not comments for the District Advisory Board bylaws. Those will come later. So Jan, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, my question is I appreciate the intention of creating more parks in the unincorporated areas. We have often been requested by the staff to be looking for properties, looking for options, because we are so well built out. And my sense is that we submit property ideas and don't necessarily hear back. So is there a mechanism for hearing back or understanding? I also understand there's a sort of a, it's private to talk about property negotiations from the board. However, it seems to me we get that request and we don't really hear.
Thank you for the question. Scott, do you have something you want to say?
Sure, I appreciate that input, and yeah, we do from time to time receive just unsolicited information about properties that might be for sale in certain parts of the district. We do typically take a look at those. One of our, quite frankly, our greatest challenge, and I don't think this is the purpose of tonight's meeting per se, but we do need to address the financing issue at some point. We basically do all of our capital improvements, including land acquisition, on the backs of the 54 cents per thousand tax rate, plus some SDCs, and depending on which part of the district it's in, we do have the limiting SDC ordinance right now. Going forward, we're hoping to get that back to a district-wide use, but even that is somewhat limited. So what our challenge is we get a lot of these types of things that come at us, and we frankly don't have the funding to go out and buy a bunch of property, which is why we've had to be creative and look at different ways of doing that. For example, the agreement that we struck somewhat recently with the Oregon City School District for the Jennings Lodge school site. That's not the end-all solution for our Jennings Lodge Parks needs, but it's one piece of the puzzle that we can do something creative where we don't have to buy the property, and we can save a lot of money from not having to buy and then invest some money into development. But yes, we need to talk about that. That's something for a different meeting, I think, and we have had the discussion at a very high level with the board about the need for a bond measure, and this really, I think, gets to that issue, and not being able to do that with our 54 cents, which is supposed to mostly be for the operating needs of the district.
Yeah, just to add to that, you, as you said, in the end, the vision always was to go out for a bond, which never happened. So we need to relook at that. The district needs to relook at that in the future. Paul.
Yeah, Scott. So when these, it sounds maybe by the way you were speaking there that perhaps a number of properties may have been brought to your attention over the years, and perhaps that didn't make it to the board of directors or the DAB. So I'm curious, is there a process that the board of directors or the DAB or both could be apprised of opportunities like that and at least be informed?
Sorry, Chair Bernard, were you saying something, or?
I'm sorry, I had to let my dogs out.
Oh, okay.
I turned the mic off.
I'll address that question, Commissioner Savas, as best I can. There really, quite frankly, is not a there's not a policy in place for that. That would be something that would be very helpful for us to do. In my 4 years with the district, we've had just, again, just sort of unsolicited property real estate matters come before us, and it's all we can do to kind of manage just exploring whether they might be a good fit for our existing master plan needs or not. Or we have some staffing limitations that go with that as well. But I would really say that I think you made the best point, Commissioner, that is, this would be exactly why our good functioning DAB getting put into place, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, would be very helpful for staff. We don't have that advisory board in place to bounce those types of things off of and ask for the input, and whether we should further pursue these and take them up the ladder per se. But it's just been hit and miss. So I will acknowledge that, but I would also say that getting the DAB in place and functioning, this would be a perfect example of why we need that to get done as soon as we can.
Well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate the response. And, as I spoke to the intended design of the advisory board's plural position or structure that was in place early on, it would seem like that local board for that particular area could actually be in place today to really, explore those ideas and get that moved up to either the DAB or the board of directors. But I just want to say that, it just seems to me that more people on the ground, more connection, more citizen input to the residents would be of value. And I would love to learn more about how and why I know you weren't here then, but how and why those sub-area advisory boards seem to evaporate. But well, that's a conversation for a different day, I think. Thank
Ken,
you.
Yes, when I was listening to the person who asked the question, the thing that seemed to be of biggest concern was that they would make a recommendation or make aware of the Parks Department a piece of property that was available and then never hear back. And their real question was, is there a mechanism by which when somebody says, here's a piece of property that may be available, after that you acknowledge that you received that, then after you've looked at the situation, if you can't afford it, don't want to buy it, whatever it may be, or that you are going to do so, get back to that person with a specific answer. I think that's what they were looking for. I don't know if that happens or doesn't happen, but if it doesn't, we should make sure that it does.
all right, thanks. That's assuming we don't get 1,000 recommendations by email.
Well, understood. I'm not saying that they're going to get an answer, in 10 minutes or anything like that. I mean, it takes a reasonable amount of time to look at a piece of property and make a decision as to whether it's suitable for the Parks Department's needs. But the person should get a response. Thank you.
Dylan?
Yes, thank you very much for that comment, Jan. And we have 2 more hands that have gone up. I'll just go ahead and remind individuals that we are taking general comment right now, not related to the bylaws. We will get to the bylaws comments in just a bit. But for now, I'm going to bring over Al Scott. Al, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. And just provide your name, your general area, and keep your comment to 3 minutes or less. Thank you.
My name is Al Scott, and I've worked and lived in the Oak Grove area for Jennings Lodge basically for approximately over 30 years. And I thank you for considering that the District Advisory Board as far as to help the underserved areas of unincorporated Clackamas County. I've seen that Oak Grove in the past through different, whether it be the school district, whatever, many times has been more underserved compared to other areas such as Happy Valley and all. And I hope you will be able to continue up with solutions for this. And one question I had specifically, I also serve on HDOG board, Historic Downtown Oak Grove. But one question there is the nearest park, say for Historic Downtown Oak Grove, is actually the Bunnell Park. Is there ever anything, whenever I go by there, there's really no development. There's maybe a picnic table or 2, dogs running around, but is there ever anything designed or planned? I know it's a smaller area, but it's basically, there is Risley Park, you go down to Elk Rock Island, Milwaukee, but yet for Oak Grove, and especially that, there's not a whole lot available. And I was just curious, is there anything planned, Scott, or, for any future work or potential development? I mean, even what are, it could be, what are things for the kids to play in, sprinkler type thing or something for the summertime, because there's a lot of people congested in Oak Grove. There's a lot of apartments and things which the children don't have access to a whole lot. And so just curious if there is any plan for development or anything a little bit more than what's been done there so far.
Chair, I can address that again if you'd like.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Scott. I understand what you're saying, and again, I'm going to go back to we definitely have a funding issue in this district. We have much greater need than we have the funds to develop facilities. We do have some existing facilities, such as the one that was just referenced, and we do need to take a look at those. So the other issue that I didn't mention yet that we need to address is that our district master plan is now 16 years old. It was adopted in 2004. updated in 2007, mostly for the Happy Valley edition, but of course they've withdrawn, so that's sort of negligent at this point, or not important at this point. But we have in our budget, and we plan to begin our district master plan update process for the whole district, and just basically taking a look at all of our needs, a lot of citizen input, a lot of surveying, and addressing where we can spend, where we should be spending our limited resources, and also to have that as a guiding document for perhaps, again, going back to the bond measure, if we were to ask for citizens or voters' support of a bond measure, what would that amount be, perhaps? What is the level of service this community wants? So we're dealing with an outdated master plan, and we've just resolved the Happy Valley issue, which now allows us to move forward in planning for what the district boundaries now are. We had to put that on hold for over 2 years because we didn't know the district boundaries for certain until June 30th of this year. So understand the point. Again, something we need to take a look at, and I think our district plan will help us out with that.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for that comment, Mr. Scott. Still continuing on with just general comment unrelated to the bylaws. The next person is Grover Jeffrey Bornfeld. Mr. Bornfeld, if you could go, there you go. Please provide your name, your area, and keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
My name is Grover Jeffrey Bornfeld. I live in Jennings Lodge, and I specifically, not about the bylaws, want to talk about back in the early, what was it, 1974, 1980, 92, there was a requirement for a comprehensive plan for Clackamas County. And in that comprehensive plan, to this day, it says one of the items is establish a park and recreation site selection process with location as the primary determining factor. And they go on to say the priorities are land suitable for neighborhood and community park development in sub area B, which just happens to be everything west of 205, all the way down to the bottom of the NCPRD. And it specifically spells out Oak Lodge as one of the most neglected, and they also mention Overland Kendall neighborhoods. So my point is, how did these priorities that we have, given that 80% of the entire NCPRD population are subject to the to the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan, and the Comprehensive Plan is designed to guide, direct, and put things in order to meet what's in that plan. In that plan also is one more thing I want to put forward is that it has actually standards listed. They're adopted standards, and for a neighborhood park, there should be one every somewhere between 2 and 20 acres. It should have 2.5 acres for every 1,000 population, and you shouldn't have to walk any farther than 1/4 mile and 1/2 mile. So, and then the community parks are up to 100 acres, and it's 1/2 mile and 3 miles. So those were their pre-PRD seems to have priorities that don't comply with that. And so my big concern is, how can we ignore the state mandated, adopted comprehensive plan and set priorities that are in violation, or at least ignoring that? That's my question.
I don't have an answer to that. That's the first time I've ever heard anybody bring this up. I don't even know. We haven't really dealt with comprehensive plans since I've been a commissioner a whole lot. I know we've made some changes, but that's the past. Right now, we need to deal with the future. Obviously, we would never be able to find a 100-acre park within 3 miles of Oak Grove Jennings Lodge. And community parks are challenging enough, nor is there enough funding to do that. So I'm hoping that tonight we can resolve the issue with the bylaws and get the DAB back running and get the Parks District back on track.
I'm in total support of that and look forward to contributing to that part of the conversation. It's just for me. The comprehensive plan is state mandated and it's been there unchanged for all these years. We'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your comment there, Grover. It looks like we have one more hand, Chair. It is from Carol Cookson. Carol, if you have a comment that is not related to the District Advisory Board bylaws, please go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. Provide your name, your area, and keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you. Carol, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
go ahead.
Okay, I live in the Oakfield area of unincorporated Clackamas County. I've lived here for 17 years now, and I've lived in Clackamas County my entire life. It was my understanding that when we passed the tax for parks, that would be used equitably amongst the area, and the development I've seen has all been in Happy Valley. They've got some great parks and great facilities. What happened to the rest of the money? And I keep hearing, well, it's a funding issue. Well, those taxes continue to be paid, and they've been paid for many, many years. What happened?
You're muted.
No, Jim.
You're muted.
Shoot. Because Happy Valley is growing and the SDCs are quite large, and also because they're undeveloped, lots of times you can make agreements with a developer to build a park instead of paying SDCs. And matter of fact, that's how many of them are built in that area. Or because, for example, Milwaukee has been slow to grow, they have few SDCs, and that definitely picked up lately. And even Oak Grove's starting to pick up. So SDCs are starting to grow, but you can only use that for capital. You can't use all of it. So that's a limitation for building new parks in Oak Grove and places that are already developed out. Unless you're tearing down a house and building something bigger and paying SDCs, that's a challenge. So that's why Happy Valley, you know, because it was bare land. I was on the district back in the, I'm not going to say 70s. I wasn't born yet. I was back on the district back in the, let's say, 90s. And Happy Valley, because it was growing, there was open land. We were buying land for using SDCs, and 54 cents when the piece of land was a lot cheaper than they are today, as Happy Valley was growing. Well, you can't do that when it's already built out. Paul, I see you have your hand.
Yeah. I just want to respond to the question, and also just one correction though, Jim. Happy Valley entered the district in 2006. Is that correct? I believe so. I believe they entered in 2006. So anything that happened in the 90s was not, Happy Valley was not included in the district. But
Yep.
My opening comments, I mentioned the fact that these sub areas were to be granted $500,000 to $800,000 in 1990 dollars. So with interest, each of those areas, four of those unincorporated areas altogether, that would have been $3.2 million in 1990 dollars, and in today's dollars, probably closer to $6.5 million. And I would love, if you were back in there, maybe just jog your memory. Because at the time the district was formed, those parks were promised. You know, the land was affordable. Things were doable back then. Where is that money? Does anyone know what happened to that those promised dollars for each of those sub areas? Because we could do a lot of money. We do a lot today with $6.5 million.
Well, it's not laying around. If that's what you're suggesting, it's not in somebody's bank account.
Well, I'm just asking for the history. You know where it evolved, and I think it's worth looking into.
Probably went down the drain in the pool. That pool used to just suck the money out of the district, I can assure you that. So I have a question related to what Paul just said. So outside of Clackamas County, I mean, was not that area along Sunnyside within the district before Happy Valley annexed it? So we were buying land towards Happy Valley. I wasn't suggesting we were buying land for Happy Valley. We were buying it in unincorporated Clackamas County before Happy Valley annexed it into the city.
Well, I appreciate that clarification. That helps. You know, when you mentioned Happy Valley, I was confused.
Well, it is Happy Valley today, so. All right, are there more questions? I don't
No,
see any.
they're not, Chair.
What's next on the agenda? Gary?
Right, next is the public discussion item, North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Advisory Board bylaws update. We'll start with a staff presentation by Scott Archer, the district director of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Then commissioners can ask questions, then we'll go for public comment, and then bring it back to board discussion. So we'll start, if Scott could please give a brief presentation.
Thank you, Gary. I'm going to ask, so Jessica Botteron is on the meeting here with me. She is an NCPRD staff member, and she's helping with the presentation. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint and just going to, as quickly as I can, I'm going to walk through this. Jessica is going to help me with that. Not realizing there was going to be this much discussion prior to the main agenda item. Some of this has already been discussed, so I'm going to try to move through those points quickly. So the idea tonight is this is an overview of the status of the DAB bylaws update, where we're at, why we're here tonight, and some potential recommendations for you to consider. So to the next slide. We move to the next slide. There we go. So some of this has already been discussed, but a high level, and this is more not for as much for the board, but for those residents and visitors that are viewing the meeting tonight. The district was formed in 1990. We now have, with Happy Valley not being in the district, where we cover 27 square miles. We are guided by the Volunteer District Advisory Board, the DAB, which is the heart of the discussion tonight. The district is governed by you, the Board of County Commissioners, in your capacity as our Board of Directors. The strategic direction is informed by the district master plan, which I referred to previously, that needs to be updated. And then again, we spent some time already talking about the permanent district rate of 54 cents per thousand, which is inadequate to fund all of the both the operations as well as the capital needs of the district. Next slide. So this is just quickly a district map. This reflects the district now, with Happy Valley no longer being in the district. So you see that kind of in the upper right, that open area where Happy Valley is, and that used to be part of our district. We now have about 105,000 people that live in the district boundaries. So these next few slides, and I'm going to hit these as quickly as I can because again, some of this has been covered, but I think it still helps to give the board some background on this discussion and help you to have your conversation. Just a background and a timeline. So in March of 2017, the DAB meetings were suspended. The board asked that they be suspended because of the legal complexities of the unfolding Happy Valley withdrawal issue. Therefore, DAB meetings were not held between March of 2017 and July of 2019. Last year in May, so May 2019, the board directed staff to reconvene and start those meetings up again with the DAB, with the main purpose being to review and revise the bylaws of the District Advisory Board. The board asked that the DAB's composition more accurately represent the population and residents of the district. That was the reasoning for the update. So the DAB meetings reconvened, and we started our regular monthly meetings in July of 2019. We held monthly meetings, which were facilitated in part with the help of Clackamas County Resolution Services. And these monthly meetings were focused mainly on reviewing the bylaws and talking about recommendations or considerations for updating the bylaws. These meetings went until February of this year. The DAB last met on February 12th of 2020. And that's the point where we have paused this process. The DAB did make significant progress on making some recommendations or drafting updated bylaws. However, I think Commissioner Savas noted this as well. The full review of the bylaws work was not able to be completed because of the discontinuation of the meetings after February of 2020. The main discussion points throughout these several months of work that the DAB did were mostly around the member composition, and the significant issues there are balancing the proportional representation by population, the question of whether elected officials should serve as voting members of the board, and representation of traditionally underserved populations in the district, which might include geographic, demographic, and other factors. The DAB did make a proposal, and it was an 11-member proposal, and that will be outlined in a slide that's coming up in just a moment. I'm going to put that slide up that's going to compare the current bylaws with the DAB recommendation, and then a staff proposal for you to also consider. The DAB also did recommend a new system for nominating and appointing members. So they also reached a recommendation on that. The topic of geographic representation and then the revisions to the future master plans were left unaddressed after the last DAB meeting in February. That hence is kind of where we're at, is those topics did not get to be addressed by the DAB. The special board meeting that was supposed to happen in March was canceled because of COVID, is just now happening tonight. So that's where we're at tonight. Next slide. The board did ask that the DAB hold, that the staff hold on having the DAB meeting scheduled again until this meeting, which is just now happening tonight, could be rescheduled. Also, it's worth noting the Milwaukee City Council did talk about the DAB recommendation that I'm going to go through in more detail in just a moment. They discussed that at a meeting of the council in January of 2020, and the city did express some concerns about that proposal. This is important to note that the NCPRD and City of Milwaukee IGA, Intergovernmental Agreement, does reflect the current bylaws as written. So a change would trigger the need to update the IGA with the city. So given the unaddressed items that I mentioned, and additional feedback that we've received and some board discussion at some of your issues meetings since the DAB last met in February, staff is also bringing forward a proposal. This is a staff professional recommendation of a DAB composition for you to consider. And again, that will be put up on this slide. Lastly, two additional items to just kind of generally related to this topic. One, again, it's important that we note Happy Valley's withdrawal has been completed. They are no longer part of the district as of June 30th of this year. That's important because they had representation on the existing DAB, and the bylaws still currently reflect that they do. And then the last part here is that since the last DAB meeting was held, several of, in fact, most of the positions on the DAB have become vacant due to people leaving or terms expiring. We are now recruiting. That recruitment is open until the end of August, so that is certainly a factor of consideration as well. So this slide, this is these next two slides, this one, and then there's going to be a map that follows this. And if you'll just bear with me, I would like to just quickly walk through this. And of course, I'll move quickly, but if you'd like to go back and review this again when you're deliberating or whatever you'd like to do, I'm happy to do that. First of all, so there are three columns from left to right: the existing bylaws, which is 9 members, the DAB proposal that I mentioned, which is 11 members, and the staff proposal, which is 9 members. So the 3 columns going left to right. The existing bylaws account for 1 or 2 members from the city of Milwaukee. This is a little bit convoluted, and just kind of bear with me here, but 1 member is appointed by the city, and that can be either elected or non-elected. And then there are some positions which say, for example, members from west of 205, which may reside in the city of Milwaukee. So there might be 1 other member from the city of Milwaukee. The city of Happy Valley currently has the same standard as Milwaukee. Of course, going forward, that's going to be corrected and will be a non-issue. And then the unincorporated residents, there are either 4, 5, or 6 voting members, and that depends on whether one of the west of 205 and one of the east 205 members are within city limits. So again, I know this is a little convoluted, but that's how the bylaws are currently written. And then there is one community center representative, which the current representative is the appointee from the Milwaukee Center Community Center Advisory Board. And there is a liaison from the district board, which is a non-voting member, but a liaison. Next, in the middle column is the DAB proposal, which was which they did make this recommendation, and that is for 2 voting members within the city of Milwaukee limits. One of those may be a city council person, but it's appointed by the city, and it may be a city council person. One is just a general non-elected resident from within the city. There will be no Happy Valley representations going forward. And then in the unincorporated residents, there would be 7 voting members. 6 of these are at large from essentially anywhere in the unincorporated area of the district. 1 specifically from the identified most severely underserved area from the master plan. So whatever current version of the master plan identifies that, that's where that would be from. It also holds the member from the community center position. And going forward, we should note this community center representative might represent more than just the Milwaukee Center as we move into the community center for Concord or other facilities. There might be somebody representing more broadly the community centers in the district. And then the addition of the district board member as a voting member or sitting member of the DAB versus being a liaison. The last column on the right is the staff proposal for you to also consider. And we came up with this proposal to give you something to consider that the DAB did not get the opportunity to address some of the geographic representation issues and a few other things. So this is what I would say is a compromise that you might consider that does actually address some geographic boundaries, and I'll go through that, and I'll show you the map on the next slide after I go through this. So the staff proposal is two members from the city of Milwaukee, the same as the DAB proposal. One is a city council appointee that may or may not be a city councilor. One is a non-elected resident. No Happy Valley representatives. Then there are proposed 6 voting members from the unincorporated portions of the district, and this is 1 less than the DAB has proposed. But as you'll see on the map, we've aligned this with some population proportionality. So what we've done is we've taken the best boundaries that we thought we had available within the district, which is our existing CPO boundaries. And we've aligned those boundaries roughly, and I say roughly because they're not exact, with some representation. So I will show you this in just a moment, but I want to be clear what we're proposing is this is a geographic boundary to have some representation from the different areas of the district. We're not proposing that the CPOs would make the appointment to the DAB. So we've got 2 from Oak Grove Community Council, 1 from Jennings Lodge CPO, 1 from Clackamas CPO, 1 Southgate, and then 1 from the combined Sunnyside West Mount Scott CPO. The community center representative stays just as is on the other 2 as well. And then we are, in this proposal, the district board member is a liaison, not a voting member, as exists in the current bylaws. So that's a 9-member proposal. So next slide, please, Jessica. Thank you. So what I'm going to do here quickly is explain this is the CPO map generally, and explain the population distribution and the representatives that we are proposing in the staff proposal. So this is the staff proposal's recommendation. This is just to give you a visual understanding of what we're talking about. And I would also say what's important as you look at this, we've got the populations of these areas listed. And while it is not perfect. Again, we had boundaries that exist with the CPOs, and what we've come up with is one representative for approximately every 10 to 15,000 one representative for every 10 to 15,000 citizens, and we've tried to distribute that to the best we can. This is not a perfect solution, but we think it's the best thing that we can recommend to you. So, starting in the upper left area of the map, Jessica is going to move the pointer around. That shaded area is the city of Milwaukee. We've got about 22,000 people in that area, and we have proposed 2 representatives from that area. Going down the left side of the map, we are now on the Oak Grove Community Council rough geographic boundaries. Population of this area is about 25,500, and we are proposing 2 representatives from that area. And then going all the way to the bottom, that area is the Jennings Lodge CPO. There are about 5,000 people, and we are proposing 1 representative from that area. So Jessica, if you'll take the pointer and move it kind of around both Jennings Lodge and CPO. What I would like to demonstrate here is just all the way up to Oak Lodge as well, Oak Grove. So Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge, this whole unincorporated portion of the district, has about 30,000 people, and we are proposing 3 representatives. So that's 1 for about every 10,000 people. So that kind of sticks with that. So then back up to the top of the map, we are on the Southgate CPO boundaries approximately. We're proposing, this is, again, unincorporated. It's east of Milwaukee, but it is unincorporated. A little over 15,000 people on this one, and we're proposing 1 representative there. And then going down this area, both west and east of 205. So this crosses 205. This is the, this is Clackamas CPO. And this area has 12,000, just a little over 12,000. So we're proposing 1 representative. And then the last of the 5 unincorporated areas or CPO areas is the, we've taken what are 2 CPOs and combined them together for basically kind of an east and northeastern side area. This is what is the Sunnyside and West Mount Scott CPOs combined. And there are about 13,500 residents in that area, and we're proposing 1 representative from that area. So let's slide to the next. So what we are recommending, I know this is a lot of information that's just come at you, board, and we're happy to have entertain questions and talk about this more. We can pull any of those slides back up, but the purpose of tonight is to receive public input on the topic of the District Advisory Board, which is next on your agenda, and to have board deliberation and discussion in regard to what you would like us to do with the DAB bylaws update. And we are hoping to receive some direction from you this evening on what your preference would be. With any of these options, with either of the proposed options, you really have the opportunity to either send that back to the DAB and have them complete the work, although my sense is that might take a while again, but they have done a lot of good work. That's been noted, and I do want to acknowledge that DAB over the course of several months spent many hours. In fact, they had extended meetings where they specifically scheduled from 4:30 to 8 or later on several occasions just to try to get through these DABs. It was a difficult process, no question. So I do want to acknowledge the good work of the DAB and their recommendation. And I want to say that I think the staff proposal, while it doesn't exactly match that, it honors the intent and the spirit of what was trying to be done, which is to have some district population proportionality. And we've attempted to do that. So the other option, board, is you could make a decision and just ask staff to bring back some proposed bylaws updates that you could consider at a future board meeting. So with that, I'm gonna wrap up and just say that we'll answer any questions and be happy to help with the conversation in any way we can.
Well, as the board chair of the district, I'm going to take the prerogative to make some comments. First off, when the district was created, I mean, when during this challenging time, we asked that Paul be put as a board member to facilitate moving through the bylaws, which I had asked that they be done in a certain period of time. Just like C4, I didn't want this to go on for a year, while COVID has made it a year, at least if it seems like it. So one of the, and the agreement was the board said that no elected official from the Board of County Commissioners would be on the DAB. I showed up at that meeting, and I will say I blew it up, absolutely, totally. And I did it on purpose, because in that meeting, a discussion about a board member being on that board, the DAB, was part of the bylaw discussion. And the commission had said no board member would be on it. Now, I have a map too, and I think it's the same map, right? Can you put my map up? I thought it was a little simpler.
The same map that was in the packet, Chair Bernard.
Okay, let's put it back up.
The CPO map, Scott.
I didn't think it had CPOs on it.
Let's go back to that map slide if we can, Jessica, thanks. There you go.
Okay, yeah, that's the map. So it doesn't really matter so much if you, I mean, I totally support a 9-member board. The city of Milwaukee can put on there whomever they want. And I ask that you know, because some CPOs do not really exist, or they are still there but aren't active, that we look at population rather than strictly the board, the boundaries of the CPO. The idea that somebody from that area would be appointed doesn't really make much difference unless they have somebody to report to. And the problem here is that we can appoint, but who are they representing if they're not talking to anybody? So I think we need to add a requirement in the bylaws that that representative call, or with the support of the Parks District, call a meeting once a year or quarterly to discuss what's been happening at the Parks District. This might kind of address Paul's idea. It's sort of a parks board that area's representative would be on the DAB, and that would be everywhere. So the areas that we've got here, plus the one community representative who could be at large anywhere in the district. But they are to report. And also, we have Clackamas News, which everybody gets. They could also have a section in the Clackamas News that could say what they're doing, like a little article, contact information, so that people can reach out to them. Maybe we put this map in there and we put the person's name there, that's who they represent. I have, City of Milwaukee has looked at this and will accept this. And I think it's the best we can do at this time. We could even go further in the future by taking those zones or those areas, I hate to use zones, and those people could have the opportunity to create sort of a parks advisory, local parks advisory committee who could look at land, look at potential offers, and certainly in the future, should there be a campaign for a bond measure or some increase in tax levy, those folks could help represent that area in a ballot measure. Other than that, I think the DAB has done an excellent job with the bylaws. They've worked really hard. They've come up with some great ideas, and I have no problem with any of those issues. The zones, there would be no zones, so SDCs collected anywhere in the district are district SDCs. So unlike when Happy Valley grew, those SDCs were stuck in the Happy Valley area. Anything that happens in the district that produces SDCs would fund district-wide capital. And I think that is fair. Frankly, I think we made a mistake at the time with Happy Valley. We were trying to make them wish that they would stay. And that's why we did split that up, and what was raised in the zone was spent in the zone. So I think this is a good representation of the community, but we really need a mechanism for folks to communicate to their residents. So that's it for now, and I am going to go to Paul.
Yeah, if you could keep the map up, please. Appreciate your comments, Commissioner Bernard. I don't agree with it all. Let me just point out, not arguing, but let me just point out a little bit of the problem of let's just talk about the math for a moment. There's 105,000 people in the district approximately today. And Scott, I don't know if you added up these numbers, but if you add up all these population numbers on your map, it comes to 94,000 people. So the math isn't right. And I don't think that those CPO boundaries are an effective way for the very reasons that Commissioner Bernard just stated. So if we look at it, it's about 100,000 people in the district, 105, 104, whatever it may be. And Mr. Schmidt, our county administrator, the district administrator, joined me, thank you, Gary, joined me Wednesday evening for a town hall I held. And we were joined by Milwaukee City Councilor Lisa Beatty, and she agreed that these areas, these geographic areas, should be, basically reflect a balance of population. So we threw the idea out of, if you divide the district up by 10 areas, or 10 representatives, that is, not 10 areas, but 10 representatives, that'd be 10,000 people per representative. That'd be 100,000 altogether. And you'd end up, and then add the one Milwaukee Center vote, that's 11. I get to 11. And so did the DAB when the DAB did the math. So I'm not sure how we got the 9. Either way, the city of Milwaukee's votes remain the same, 2 and 2, plus the Milwaukee Center. So their votes remain the same, but mathematically, I think we need to get back to balance. A range of 10 to 15,000 is pretty unfair when you consider that that's quite the spread. And if you're going to dilute the DAB's influence or the unincorporated areas by 2 votes, I think that needs to be explained. So with that, the other thing I did want to say is that currently the bylaws are really silent on who the Board of County Commissioners selects and who the city of Milwaukee selects. But we got to go back to the original intent. And if you go back and you read the contracts, and for those attorneys out there, I just ask that you listen very carefully. If you go back and you look all the way through from the beginning and all the way to where we are today, the design was that the advisory board for each of the sub areas, that a representative from those sub areas would be on the DAB. The DAB was envisioned, and I'm gonna put up a slide here to make it easier for everyone. So if you just give me a second. So y'all see that? Oops, oh, hang on. So basically, what was envisioned and designed and put into place, and the contracts reflect that, if you go back in the history, and I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen every contract thus far has basically validated this. Milwaukee has done a great job. Milwaukee's done an excellent job. They have their city council that was there in 1990 when the district was formed. They created their sub area. They had their own sub area called Milwaukee, and they had their own Parks Advisory Board, just like all the other sub areas had at the time. Okay, so what exists today still is, that's misspelled, the Milwaukee Park and Recreation Board. So those members from those boards, those 5 sub areas at the time in 1990, 1991, 92, would be seated, 1 or 2 of those folks would be seated on the DAB. They would be representing each of those sub areas. So Milwaukee has the ability to, and did exercise appointing their people from their citizen park and recreation board to the DAB to represent them. And then they would advise the Board of County Commissioners. So the other areas, the 4 that I spoke of earlier, they don't exist. So those unincorporated areas do not have an advisory board of their own. They don't have staff for those advisory boards, and they don't have an elected official or elected body that's monitoring and helping them through, just like the city council does. The city council of Milwaukee and the system they have in Milwaukee meets the requirements of the original design. So because 3-1, the measure, clearly said that there would be advisory boards, plural, and that they would be made up of local residents, and that those residents would be, that would be on the district advisory board, the board we're talking about now, would come from those citizen boards. So it wasn't elected officials on the table, and I suggest that it remain silent so that we can reconstruct what was intended. Because if we don't and we alter, we are violating the intention of 3-1, the measure that formed the district. And to further exacerbate it is, if we violate it now and we think that we're going to convey the confidence to ask the voters to seek a higher tax base to build more parks, and we can't even honor what we promised, I don't think that I'd have a hard time straight facing people in the community to say, we're gonna violate the rules now like we have for 30 years, but trust us, we're gonna deliver in the next 30 years, we're gonna live up to what we promised in the first 30 years. I'm not gonna buy that. I don't think a lot of other people are gonna buy that. So I think it's time for us to look at the contracts and look at the structure, come clean with our residents, and reassemble our end. Milwaukee did a great job. They are living up to their end of what the district was envisioned to be. It is upon the Board of County Commissioners, sitting as the NCPRD Board of Directors, to step up and fix this. It's on us. Thank you.
You done? Are you done?
I'm done.
Sonia.
Thank you. Scott, could you put that map, please?
Put the map back up.
Okay. We'll pull that back up, yes.
We were kind of cutting out. Okay, Sonia, it's up.
Oh, I don't know why I don't see it. Does everybody else see it? It's not
Yep.
showing on my screen.
Hmm.
Oh, there it is. Ta-da! So I understand the rationale of 1 representative per 10,000 and how you got to that in the Oak Grove, Jennings Lodge area with the 3 in the 30,000. But when I look over in the other area, where we have 15,000 and 12,000, it just doesn't seem like that's mathematically, that doesn't add up. I mean, Paul sort of got to it in a much deeper way, but Scott, you put this together, so I just want to make sure before we move on to other things that I fully understand your thinking on this, because it seems like that area would be underrepresented with what your goal was.
Yes, thank you for that question, Commissioner. Just to be clear, what I said was roughly one representative for every 10 to 15,000 people. So not just 10,000, but 10 to 15,000, and that's rough. And I also I want to acknowledge the discrepancy that Commissioner Savas talked about with these numbers on this map not exactly aligning with what we believe to be the number of residents in the district. There's two things to that. One, our district population estimates are based on 10-year-old census data, and we're hopefully going to have some new information in the not too distant future, so that'll clear that part of it up. The CPO information came from our GIS department, and again, the idea here was I acknowledge that these aren't perfect numbers and that they don't exactly match up with the residents numbers that we use from the census data. But the point was, I maybe didn't make this clear enough. My big picture point was I wanted to give the board an option to consider that at least put some geographic boundaries around the different representative areas. They're not all exactly the same number. We could move these boundaries around, but we tried in working with our GIS folks and our PGA staff. We had folks working really hard to try and come up with some proposal that could give at least an idea of the number or roughly that were based on some existing boundaries, so that we didn't just make up some new boundaries and plop them onto the district. So these are based on existing CPOs. That was the idea. We acknowledge that these numbers aren't perfect. We could still do some work to fine tune this, but if the board was amenable to the idea of having roughly the CPOs used as the geographic boundary for the unincorporated areas, we could do some better work on that. We did have some discrepancies, so I acknowledge that. But yeah, it was approximately 10 to 15,000 people, one representative per that number. So.
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification. I really appreciate it. So I really appreciate all the history, Paul. Thank you. Since I was not part of living in this area of the district as it was being formed, I appreciate what Jim had to say about making sure that we have representatives who actually represent a community and there can be input from everyone. So those are my thoughts at this point. Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, I do want to hear from the public here, but I do want to just share one map. Could you just stop that screen and let me share one real fast? Thank you. Y'all see that? Yep. So this is the basically one of the maps. This isn't the right map, but there's another map that I don't have it with me, but that shows the sub areas. And if we reduce the areas into 4 as designed, consistent with the agreements, consistent with the contracts, consistent with the law, we can get there. We'll have a total of 5 sub areas. If they're divided properly, each sub area will have 2 representatives. The math works out perfectly. So I suggest that we get the DAB reformed, let them complete their work, and if they are not interrupted like they were in the last 2 meetings, I really believe frankly, the last 2 meetings, if they weren't interrupted, the work would be done. But those meetings were disrupted. So I want to hear from the public, but I just want to say that this is not the best map, but there is a map that shows the 5 sub areas. The math works out perfectly. The representation would be simpler, and the work upon the citizens would be a lot less, as well as the responsibility. Thank you.
Well, I would just have to add that yes, they were disrupted, but the intention was purposeful. You had agreed and worked with people to put yourself on the board of the DAB, and the commission had said nobody from the board. But
Jim,
I went to that meeting, and that was part of the bylaws being discussed. So that's what happened. I don't care what map you use. I just think it needs to be balanced. The truth is, it doesn't matter unless that person has somebody he or she is responsible to do the work that the community wants them to do. And there needs to be a feedback loop to the citizens who they represent.
Yeah, well, you threw something out there I need to address. I can't let that go, Jim. But first of all, the board didn't make that call. They spoke about it afterwards, but when the work was charged, there was no call. I made you aware of where the conversation was going. I said at every DAB meeting that I preferred no elected officials. I was challenged by one of the board members. You're not flexible. You're not flexible. You need to be flexible. So in the end, like I stated in my opening remarks, I compromised. So did the Milwaukee representative. She compromised. And we got to where we were. I kept you apprised of that. And then when Milwaukee found out about it, apparently, it sounds like they went to you, based on what you told me. And then you change your attitude towards it. So I prefer we go back to what 3-1 said. Like I said at the very first DAB meeting, like I wrote in 2 op-eds, that there should not be any elected officials. It wasn't designed. It was not designed for elected officials. Let the citizens do their work.
The city of Milwaukee IGA says who they can appoint who they like. I happen to think a contract's a contract. I've said it 100 times.
Read the
The
contract.
city of Milwaukee can put on there whom they like.
They can, that's right. Read the contract.
All right, so Ken.
Yeah, I don't care if it's 9 or 11, quite frankly, that I would defer to staff on how that works out in terms of representation. I don't believe that it matters whether or not Milwaukee puts a city councilor on there or a city citizen on there, because the city citizen would be reporting back to Milwaukee City Council. I don't think it's appropriate for county commissioners to be on advisory boards. We are liaisons to those advisory boards. Our voice gets heard without any difficulty at those liaison meetings. And my experience has been advisory boards listen to us when we are there and take our comments into consideration. It also gives us an opportunity to take their input back to the county commission. We are the final deciders for the Parks District. So we do not need to serve on the Parks District Advisory Board any more than I have to serve as a voting member on the Tourism Board, nor as a voting member on the Fair Board. So that seems to me to be the sticking point, I suppose, for lack of a better term. But I don't believe it matters who Milwaukee appoints. And if I understand their IGA correctly, they can appoint whoever they want. But I don't believe we should be serving on advisory boards to our own board. We are the final deciders. No matter what recommendation comes from advisory boards, our responsibility is to make the final decision. And that at that point is when we would have our input. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
I think we ought to revisit where the region and the county and in the state where that's actually not the case, Mr. Humberson. And I would just say that Chair Bernard serves as the chair on the audit committee. That's an advisory committee. And for crying out loud, it's the audit committee. There shouldn't be any county commissioners on there.
it's an internal committee.
It's the audit committee.
It's an internal committee.
It's the audit committee for the county.
All right, Paul. So let's move on to citizen comment.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Chair Bernard. Now is the time for public comment specific to the District Advisory Board bylaws. If any attendees would like to provide a comment, you can do so now by utilizing the raise hand feature on Zoom. If you're on the phone, let's check, we do have people on the phone, and you want to give a comment, you can hit *9. That lets me know that you are raising your hand. I see we have a lot of hands. First, we will go to Mr. Bornfeld again, Grover Jeffrey Bornfeld. Grover, if you can unmute yourself, and then go ahead and provide again your name, your general area, and please keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
My name is Grover Jeffrey Bornfeld. I live in Jennings Lodge. I actually want to speak to, we have an opportunity here. I'm glad Happy Valley's gone. I'm sorry I have a lot of things happening there, but this is a chance to actually make a big course correction to get back to what was intended 30 years ago. And I think we have a lot of the pieces right here. What I want to speak to is, I think it's critical that the finishing of the bylaws, and by the way, thank you all for the comments, and it was a working group. I'm glad Happy Valley's not part of it anymore, but it's a working group that can work things out. The challenge, and this is where having Paul be on that, I'm not going for the long term, I want to hear the short term. If we didn't have him there during those negotiations, we would have been outnumbered and outmaneuvered. And the thing I want to speak to, and then I'll get back to where I want to go with this, is that having an IGA that dictates behavior, promises, etc., for a minority portion of the Parks District is a problem. They have special privileges, they have special reporting, they have disadvantaged access. There's 80,000 people who don't have that, who contribute the lion's share of the money, and we don't have that. So I want to look at how we could go through a transition period where there is proportion. We set it up for a finite period of time to get all of that stuff ironed out with a proportional representation taking care of it. So if it's the DAB or a formation committee, I could care less. But because if we didn't, case in point, NCPRD actually did have meetings when Happy Valley was not present, and they didn't call it a DAB meeting. It was, I forget, the study of the whatever, and it was everybody that was on the DAB except Happy Valley, because they got to look at stuff that was post Happy Valley. So I want to look at having a chance to actually get the people in there who have things to say, who can speak their mind, who can represent what they represent. What hurt most was we made progress, and then in a private, off the side meeting, Milwaukee said, well, we've got the IGA, we don't agree with where it's going, so we'll play our card. And that kind of tail wagging dog, 21,000 people wagging 80,000 people, it's just not workable. So we have to go through a process to ease that out. I don't want to take anything away from Happy Valley, from Milwaukee. I think they've done a great job, like I heard several people say. But we have to get from here to there. What we don't have is the special, if you read the IGAs, it specifically says they get reports on a quarterly basis. They get, too many notes, too many papers. Anyway, it says in the IGA originally that they get quarterly reports and that they also get financial reports. What about the other 80,000 people? Where do they get that? I know that when I went on the library board, there was no inclusion of the board taking place in that. And we started digging in and started looking at it. And we actually have together changed the entire library district advisory board so that it is in compliance with what the voters voted for. And that's all I'm in favor of. I don't think there's anybody here who is adamantly opposed to that, but we need to put back in what the missing purposes was. Like, why was there a promise for, I'm not asking you to pull the money out of your pocket, but why was there a $500,000 to $800,000 promise for those other 4 areas? And Milwaukee got theirs and the rest didn't. Or maybe we did and we don't know it, but we don't have parks in Jennings Lodge. So the last thing I want to say about this idea about recruiting on the CPO boundaries, other than the numbers being wrong, and other than the numbers even for Jennings Lodge being wrong. I don't know where that number comes from. We're well over 8,000 people, and when we get the new census, we'll be even higher. But the point being is that having the ability to report back, I love the way Jim explained that. It needs to be a two-way street. That's actually what's spelled out in those pesky old comprehensive plan. But the point is, how are you going to recruit people in areas that aren't currently meeting? So that's why, again, I'm suggesting that we have a balance with the idea that it'll renew in a year or two when we get things squared away. I mean, I don't know how many of those other areas, but I know that in the CPOs, because I'm on my local CPO board, we've watched one after another fold their tent and stop functioning. I watched with the library board not being able to recruit enough people, so they had to go way outside of the local area to get enough people. So I don't think there's a quick fix now. I think there's a huge opportunity to go forward. I think it's great, but it has to be done by a proportional body of people. We'll come back with the recommendations because ultimately you guys have to approve it anyway. Last thing is, I don't think there should be any elected officials. However, in the ancient documents, starting in 1991, it did say Milwaukee can appoint their person. And as long as we stay with that, if that's what they choose to do, that's what they choose to do. But it isn't that it's going to get put cauterized or whatever that word is, but I don't want to put it in writing that it will be a city council member. No, they have the right to appoint. Okay, let them do it.
Okay.
But it has to have a balance. If we hadn't had Paul in those negotiations, it never would have worked out. So that's enough for now. I'd like to have a chance to give other people a chance to talk, but I have more stuff to talk about later. Thanks.
All right, next person.
Okay, very good. Next, we are going to bring over Carol Cookson. Carol, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Very good. And please provide your name, your area, and keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Carol Cookson. I live in the Oakfield area, and I like the idea of using the CPOs as the groups to select representatives for the advisory council, mainly because they have meetings. And I've been to a couple different CPO meetings in the area, and they're fairly active. And I think that's why the prior plan fell apart, because there was no organization in place to help discuss and carry forward ideas and citizen comments. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Carol.
All right. Thank you very much for that comment, Carol. Next, we have a familiar name, Wilda Parks. Councilor Parks, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go. Please, for the record, you might want to provide your name, your title as well, your general area, and keep a comment to 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Wilda Parks, and I live in the city of Milwaukee, and am currently a city councilor in the city of Milwaukee. And for the last several years, I have been the city's representative to the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Advisory Board. So my notes tonight, my letter, and also we sent it to you electronically, are submitted on behalf of the Milwaukee City Council. The NCPRD Advisory Board, the DAB as we're called, has worked for the past year to address two primary issues with our bylaws. The first issue was the departure of Happy Valley. The second was concerns from unincorporated Clackamas County residents that they felt underrepresented on the committee. While we made significant progress, the city of Milwaukee left the last meeting concerned about two things. Number one, that all the unincorporated seats were at large, thereby providing no certainty of geographic distribution. And number two, that Milwaukee would not be able to have a city councilor serve on the DAB. We are pleased to say that the staff recommendation addresses both of the city's concerns, and we also feel that it seems much more fair to the unincorporated area. While not all of the CPOs are active, the boundaries serve as a great framework to ensure that we're seeking input from across the entire district. The staff proposal also provides 3 times the number of unincorporated members, 6 to 2, to that of the city of Milwaukee. We hope that this provides ample opportunity for unincorporated residents to make their voices heard and to provide perspective on the many issues that face the Parks District. I'd like to thank the board and the staff for helping craft a comprehensive solution that will allow the DAB to move forward. While revising the bylaws was important and necessary, the time has come to attend to the actual work of the committee. With schools closed and indoor recreational options limited due to COVID-19, we've seen how essential our parks are to our communities. You take a trip to Milwaukee Bay or Spring Park on any sunny day, and you'll see people of all ages and from all parts of the district pouring in. I look forward to working on ways that we can make parks, all NCPRD parks, available to the people that need them. The staff proposal will give us the structure that we need to be able to do so. Thank you in advance for your careful and respectful consideration of this proposal. Milwaukee looks forward to continuing our long and successful partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilda.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Parks. Next, we are going to go to Brett Sherman. Brett, if you could go ahead and, oh, all right, Councillor Sherman, I believe. If you could go ahead and provide your name, your title, your general area, and keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Happy to. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm Brett Sherman, Happy Valley City Council President and former DAB member. I'd first like to thank the NCPRD Board, the District Advisory Board, and the staff for all the hard work on this process. It's been a really long journey, and you're finally here and you have the end in sight. While I no longer sit on the DAB, I did want to share how much I appreciated working with you all and enjoyed the interactions over the years. Even some of the heated conversations at the meetings, they were positive and respectful, and I really enjoyed that. While much of the bylaw updates were generally agreed upon by the majority of the DAB, there had been a few items that where robust debate and disagreement did occur. What was agreed, though, was a desire to provide broad, equitable representation to the district residents in both incorporated and unincorporated areas. It was also agreed that there were many parts of the district where the residents felt they were being underserved. So given that context, I am here to support the bylaw updates as proposed by NCPRD staff. I believe the proposed distribution of DAB members and incorporation of a BCC liaison will equitably serve the overall population without the potential for geographic concentration and by ensuring a level playing field among the board members. I do have one thought to share about the structure of the DAB nomination subcommittee that was brought up earlier. The current proposal is for 2 staff members, 2 DAB members, and 2 CPO representatives. Since the proposed overall structure of the DAB is now delineated by the CPO boundaries, and there's no guarantee that a future DAB composition would include a CPO representative as compared to like a CPO resident, I'd suggest the nomination subcommittee consists of 2 staff members and 4 DAB members representing 4 distinct CPO boundaries, or whatever boundaries you ultimately decide. And then if applicable, up to 2 of the 4 members would also be CPO representatives if there were actually CPO representatives on the DAB. And I think that's one of the issues we found historically with the DAB. The notion of having these subcommittees underneath the DAB sounds great. We could barely recruit people to be on the DAB. And so to find multiple people in every CPO to do that may be problematic. With that one change, though, I do believe that you'll have a really strong, durable document designed to serve the district over the years. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Sherman. Next up is Deborah Bukowski. Deborah Bukowski, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself. Good. Please provide your name, your general area, and keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Deborah Bukowski, and more or less in the Oakfield area that Paul was talking about. I think Brett made some really good points about the lack of, there's a lack of organization in terms of local groups, CPOs in some of the unincorporated areas. How long would that take to get that thing up and running if that's really integral to the DAB? Along those lines, and Brett brought up the question of the recruiting process. The former, I guess, DAB that was disbanded, I think prematurely, requested that 2 members of the DAB be part of the interviewing process for new members. Is the recruitment, which is currently underway, is that simply going to be done by staff? Because we don't, the only 2 DAB members we have, may I point out, the rest of us were term limited off, all except the 2 from Milwaukee, whose terms are on, quote unquote, ongoing in the current version of the DAB bylaws. which means they just go on forever. The rest of us have term limits. And so I think when the BCC reconsiders the bylaws, that they keep that in mind, that nobody should have unlimited terms. Also, I want to point out that one of the paragraphs on your recommendation is something that about additional bylaw update work that the DAB was not able to complete because we were disbanded. That either the DAB or staff will need to finalize and complete the update of the entirety of the bylaws. And I would say it should be the DAB. It should not be an or staff. Thank you.
So Scott, could you answer that one question? In the appointment process, do current DAB members or past DAB members participate in that interview?
They do not. So per the current method of making appointments, and we're following the longstanding process, which is, I think, most of our county boards and committees follow. I'm not saying that exclusively, but which is staff of the department works with PGA staff and does the interviews and provides the recommendations to the board. So that's the current process. That is correct.
If I may, Chair, I'd like to address Deborah's comments or questions. So Deborah, thank you for your comments. I would say that the intention, I believe that my hope is that every one of the DAB members whose terms expired reapply. Our goal was to follow the bylaws because we realize, if you may recall, that a number of things in the bylaws have not been followed. And so I thought we thought it would be best to follow the bylaws to the T. We should have probably put the applications in advance, but COVID has messed everything up. So let's just say that you apply and Grover applies and the remaining citizen members apply. It seems to me that those folks, you all in this new structure, could be part of that appointee panel as prescribed. You know, you've already been on there, you've already been approved. It's really an exercise. So ideally, I think there's enough structure and people and familiarity in place to enable what we designed. Thank you.
All right, Dylan.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Deborah, for that comment. Next, we're going to go to Al Scott. Al, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. And again, provide your name, your area, and keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
My name again is Al Scott. Live in Oak Grove section. And I just wanted to agree with Commissioner Savas as far as, to me, on the population way it should be done. But I also had one question. Now, maybe you can help give me some feedback on the Milwaukee Center having a separate vote. It seems like it's historically always has, but wasn't that originally founded by the Milwaukee City Council? At least I remember the plaque. It used to be Milwaukee Senior Center and all the council members or whatever names on the plaque. So I didn't know if that was actually all done by the city of Milwaukee. And would that be considered a city of Milwaukee vote, an extra vote in there? Or is it totally nonprofit that has their own individual sector, however they choose it? I'm just unfamiliar with the way that is done. Could somebody fill me in on how they get their member?
They have an advisory board. And so the advisory board picks the member, correct, Scott?
That is correct, yes.
So the Milwaukee Center serves the whole district. And that's why they have their own member. Any more, Al?
So it's not anymore officially, I don't want to say lobbied or per se it's not lobbied or controlled by the city council or the city of Milwaukee per se. It's all by their independent board.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for that comment, Al. Next, we're going to go to Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go.
Thanks,
Please write
Dylan.
your, yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please write your name, area, and 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Ben Johnson, and I'm a current district advisory board member that my term is up. So hopefully I will be considered for a new term. I wanted to address the last question about the Milwaukee Center. My understanding in the conversations that we'd had was that as other community centers come on board, let's say like at Concord, for example, that they would kind of create, they would join together and there would be one liaison from all community centers amongst the district, not just Milwaukee, to represent community centers on the DAB. So that's that. So for now to address some of my kind of comments, I want to thank the BCC for putting this on tonight. I really appreciate you all's attention to parks in our district, in our county. I think it's a pretty big deal. And I think COVID has really shown how important parks are for everybody. And with that avail, I think the district proposal that Scott put forward, I think is very fair and equitable and really makes sense. Granted, I know that a lot of us put a lot of work into getting where we were with the 11 members. I think it seemed like absolute chaos to get to where we were with the 11 members. Actually, I think with 9, it may be a lot simpler, and I think the distribution really, really makes sense. I feel like whether a BCC member is a voting member or not on the board, I feel like if the BCC has a strong presence as a liaison, whether they're voting or not, and their focus is really on getting parks moved forward equitably within our district, whether they vote or not, it's on you all, whether you're voting or not, to make sure that parks are important in our district. And I feel that's super important. And there's a lot of politics going on, and I feel like we just need to drop the politics, get the proposal on board that Scott put forward, and let's get to work. It is time to get to work right now. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to being on the district advisory board if you all allow me to. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that comment, Ben. Next up, again, Grover Jeffrey Bornfeld. So Grover, if you can unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm still Grover Jeffrey Bornefeld, and I still live in Jennings Lodge. What I wanted to speak to is some of the unaddressed pieces there. Having been on and currently am on, be meeting this later this week on the Concord Property and Library Planning Task Force, the ability to recruit people in identified areas demonstrated to be very difficult there. So what I'd like to have us address is, one of the things is, what do we do if we can't recruit? Because the biggest issue here is having a proportional representation. And it currently has not been, and I'm not faulting anyone, I'm just talking structurally. So the idea of dropping it to 9 instead of what the DAB group came up with, which was 11, it dilutes 2. Now, where did those seats come from? Oh, they're both from unincorporated, and that's just not, it's going back in the wrong direction. So I have no idea why the staff picked what they did, but 11 people, have 2 of them be at large. But I still think, and what has not been addressed is, I don't want to pick on any particular group, but if you can't find somebody who lives in the Sunnyside area who applies and qualifies, then what do? Is that seat empty? You then open it up after, etc. It is unresolved, and that's again why I'm suggesting we go to some sort of transition piece. And the other part is, the whole idea of an advisory board is you have the citizens being represented. That's the taxpayers, the people who pay to make this work. And my experience is, if we don't have enough of that, it will be lopsided. Case in point, if we look at the current structure, how did it ever, can't go back and relive it, but how did it ever get so that we were one district? Now, we still haven't agreed that we're going to come back to one. I appreciated Commissioner Bernard suggesting that, and I'm very much in favor of that. But how did we where did it occur? Who agreed to subdivide one district into 3 districts with specific financial penalties, not subsidizing the non-growth areas, when the whole purpose of the library, the Parks District in the first place was to meet those needs of the underserved. So it's so important to me. So I advocate that it is in fact 11. We somehow have to come up with how to address the reality. If you can't fill the seats that aren't Milwaukee or Milwaukee Center from an appropriate area, then what happens? Because if it just sits empty, then it's, again, making it more lopsided. So the original model was to have 5 and the Milwaukee Center and 3 at large. That was the original thing. So if you followed the original model and had from each of the areas and 3 at large, and the at large need to be from unincorporated. Otherwise, it's diluted the process. So I do appreciate all the work. Nice to hear from so many of the people that we work together on bringing up to speed, but I don't know where we can go from here to have a proportional body that can actually finish this process. And that the staff went from 11 to 9 and left many unanswered questions. That's still unfinished work, no fault of theirs, but that's the end of me. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that, Grover. And next we have another hand from Joel Bergman. Mr. Bergman, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. Please provide your name, your general area, and keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'll try to keep this brief, but my name is Joel Bergman. I'm actually currently serving as the DAB representative from the Milwaukee Center or Milwaukee Community Center, as selected by the Clackamas County Advisory Board to the Milwaukee Center that I'm also a member of. I just want to make sure that despite the name, the Milwaukee Community Center, it's understood that as the only functioning community center in the district, the proportionality of users and representation on the county board that I serve on is proportional to the district itself. It does not favor Milwaukee necessarily any more than anywhere else. In fact, as users of the Milwaukee Center and those people that I represent, it is proportional to the district. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that was clarified, because the name can kind of get lumped into the city representation, and that is not the case. Also one other point, I was selected from the board, and while I do actually live in Milwaukee, I serve as a Clackamas County Advisory Board member first. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Your mic's not on.
Joel, are you still with us, Joel? I had a question for you.
Yes, he is.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Joel. Well, thanks for all your help on the board. You've been a great asset. Appreciate your help. Is it still? I was just reading some old contracts. The Milwaukee Center Advisory Board, that's made up of 50% Milwaukee citizens, and the other 50% is made up of the remaining part of the district, which obviously in this case is unincorporated. Is that still the case?
I cannot verify the exact proportionality of our current board. We've been meeting via Zoom over the past several months, and my understanding, at least in my last conversations with Marty, was that we were close to proportional in the board representation, and as the actual community center, those folks that it serves, both coming through the door and then through the services it provides out the door, its users were proportionate to the district itself. For example, it's not a majority, certainly, of people coming from Milwaukee to use the Milwaukee Community Center. In fact, it's quite the opposite.
Well, yeah, thanks. I was just talking about the actual appointed members. Unless Scott has the answer. Scott, do you have the answer?
I was just trying to look that up. That's why the delay in me pulling my mute button there. I don't have that right at my at my fingertips, and I apologize. If I can find it while we're on the meeting, I'll let you know.
It's not a big deal, but I just wanted to point out, it really doesn't matter much. But as I read it, I believe I recall seeing that 50% of the membership of the Milwaukee Center Board is made up from Milwaukee, and the other 50% is the remaining part of the district. So just wanted to point that out. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm going to make a recommendation. And my recommendation is we get the reappoint the members that have their terms have expired, and get them to be on the appointment selection committee as prescribed in the draft bylaws proposed, and to finish the work on the bylaws and make a recommendation. I am in complete agreement that there should be no elected officials on there, and be silent on there. If Milwaukee chooses to bring a person from, via their council, I guess they may, but I think it's best to leave the bylaws silent on that, like they are currently, and leave that as it be. I think if you get to 11 members, which is in the recommendation, both by the DAB and some members who spoke here today, I'm comfortable with that. I think that's mathematically fair. Otherwise, it doesn't pencil, folks. The math is not there. And someone's gonna have to make an argument of why we should go against the math.
So I don't have a problem. I would like the board to consider asking Scott and his team to look at creating a board similar to the map, using the map generally, from 9 to 11 members, with 2 at-large. We could just go with the 9 with 2 at-large members, and that I'm fine with being silent on the elected official. The city of Milwaukee do whatever they want. As far as the Board of County Commission, there would be there would only be a liaison. And look, I just want this damn thing done before I leave the county. I've been trying to get this done for a year. Get it done. So if we don't need the folks from the DAB to do this, you guys can do this, set it up, and then we get the DAB in to vote it in, and you can use the current board or the ones that have expired. Let them vote on it and recommend it to the Board of County Commissioners. But I want this done in a month and a half, 2 months at the latest. This can't go on forever. As far as Grover, we can't be in a catch-22. I mean, a catch-22 is, I'll bet you that all these committees existed, but they couldn't find membership. I mean, as a mayor, we had to beg people. As the president of an automotive association, I gave away dinners, door prizes, and everything, and I couldn't get people to attend the meetings. And so 9 to 11, if we can't get them, we have to, I don't think there's anything we can do about that. So are the rest of the board good with that, Paul?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we direct staff to reconvene the advisory committee members, reappoint those, and then set up the selection committee, and assemble the goal of 11 members of the DAB, and allow the DAB to convene back together to finish up the bylaws and wrestle with how to deal with the boundaries of the areas, whether they're CPO boundaries, and which ones ought to be at large. That's my motion.
I'll second that.
All right, further discussion? I'm not going to accept that. I think this needs to be done now. We're the board. We need to put our big boy pants on or big girl pants on, whatever, and vote this and get this moving forward so we can get this district back to work.
Okay, Jim, I would like to just mention what I would suggest.
Okay.
If we move ahead with Paul's idea that we put a time frame on it, so there's a date certain when it's done. Because I agree with you that this has been going on too long. So if you can give us, I don't know how many months that might be. You're here, what, through December?
4 months.
So we need to get it done by, is there a specific date that you would like to?
Well, so the Parks District is in limbo until this is done. And
I know.
that's more important. So I'd like to see a month and a half. The end of September.
I just think that's a better compromise, is to go ahead, give a date certain, and then just get people to work and be done with it, with Paul's idea. So I don't know, Commissioner Savas, what do you think about that?
Wait, I got Sonia's hand up.
All right. Okay.
So I'm confused about in Paul's motion as to what the district advisory board should definitely finalize the recommendations. We're really, really close. There's a lot of consensus around this. But the process of which we appoint new members, I don't have a rationale as to why it should be different than any other district, any other advisory board that we appoint. To have this district advisory board appoint the new district advisory board. So that's a part I'm fuzzy.
Paul?
I can answer that. So actually, Sonia, good point. So from our standpoint, it'll be the same process, actually. Those recommendations will be brought forward to the Board of County Commissioners to approve, just like we normally approve. All of our ABCs don't have the exact same process of how they interview people and how they go. And so basically, this is a way to, number one, ensure we get diversity on the board. We consider people of color, we consider low income, all those factors. And we also consider, and we wrangle with this unincorporated area that might not have the activity and the people engagement in order to fill. So that's why putting these folks back together to solve that. And that's what we were discussing, actually. So I think it gets there, and we have enough people to get the panel going already. Some of them, four of them at least, 5 of them were part of this meeting today, so they're ready to go. If we can finish our work, I believe we can meet a deadline. I think it's reasonable to say by the end of October, the latest, that we have this done. And I think that in order to get the recruitment process underway, I just ask for the consideration to give us till October 31st, and we'll have this done.
So that
one way or another, it'll be done.
So this is one of the problems, is you're saying it's your work. It's their work.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's
yeah,
what I'm talking
but you're calling it your work. Get your work done. They need to get their work done because they're advised.
So, hey, Jim, can I finish my question? Because I want to ask for Gary's advice on this. Gary, is there any reason to do things differently for this advisory board, as far as having the current advisory board make recommendations for the next advisory board, or can we just keep this current advisory board in place, get the bylaws done, make sure we have that all wrapped up and good, and then use our current processes that we usually use? I'm putting you on the spot, Gary, I know, but this part is really confusing to me. And I see a lot of conflict here, and I'm trying to find a way to avoid it.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I actually raised my hand to clarify. So, Commissioners, you already gave direction to staff that the current DAB, all the terms have expired except for Milwaukee's appointees. We are doing a recruitment right now to fill all the vacancies per the bylaws, per your direction. So I guess, are you asking us to reverse that or finish that process? In which case, Scott, when is the deadline for the current applicants for the open seats?
The deadline for the recruitment is end of August, and we did post that in late July. And what I would tell you is, so we have, of our 9-member board, just so everybody's very clear on this, our 9-member current board, minus the 2 Happy Valley representatives because they're not in the district. So essentially we have a 7-member working board. We have 5 of the 7 positions open right now. And as of this afternoon, we had received, I believe, 12 applicants for 5 positions. So just to give you the idea that we are working closely with the PGA staff to make a concerted effort, as was, I think, requested per what Gary was just mentioning, the previous board direction to go forward with the recruitment, was to do some extensive outreach into the community and try to get some interest in that in the position. So we're still aggressively recruiting, and we've got 12 applicants for 5 positions today that I know of. So just to make sure that everybody was clear about that.
So thank you, Scott. So my suggestion is let us finish the process of what you've already directed us to do. If you'd like former DAB members to serve on an interview panel, we could do that as long as they're not applying to be on the panel again, because that would not be appropriate for them to interview themselves. But every advisory board has authority to do their own interview panel. It does not have to be staff only. Some do have members of the current advisory board, which at this point are the 2 Milwaukee reps. Those are the only active members of the DAB. So either way, my question is, because I believe this conflicts with the motion I just heard, would you like us to finish the recruitment process you've already directed us to start and get that done?
Yes.
Okay. In which case, I respectfully suggest that's a little different than what I heard Commissioner Savas's motion. Let us finish the recruitment. Once those appointments are made, then you give back to the DAB these bylaws to finish their draft. Sounds like by the end of October, and then come back to you. Would that be appropriate, Commissioner Savas?
So Gary, help me out. We've already done a lot of the work. We've advertised. The recruitment will be done, or not recruitment, but the advertisements application process will be over at the end of the month. At September 1st, we'll have a stack of applicants, right? It seems to me that once the board comes back after the recess, they could say, really both. They could say, you know what, the previous members that were on the board, DAB, I think there's 4 of them, four of them that would reapply. That we do that right away, and then we go through the interview process for the remaining empty seats, okay, which I think is going to be about 4 or 5 empty seats. You've got some of the backbone right there to at least get some of the work underway, to work on the bylaws and finalizing this. And then when the advisory board is fully appointed and in place, most of the work will be done, and then we can move on. So in essence, it's both. We would be having a small portion of the DAB back together, and we would have the full board back to get the full DAB seats filled by October.
Okay. So I just heard Scott say there are 5 vacancies only.
Well, that's under 9. Under 11, that'd be 7.
But you're not changing the bylaws yet. You're reconstituting the current DAB under its current structure to finish a recommendation. So that would be 5 vacancies plus 2 Milwaukee seats, a total of 7 to finish these bylaw discussions.
Right, and the bylaws allow up to 9 currently, and we'd be going to 11. It's doable.
Okay. All right. So what I'm hearing is finish the current recruitment that ends August 31st, and then staff will, as expeditiously as possible, bring to the board a recommendation to fill the vacancies.
Right.
Okay.
But everybody has the same opportunity. Well, we got Ken's hand up and Sonia's hand up.
So I'm just going to suggest that you put a timeline on this and request respectfully that the staff have a slate before this board for appointment in the last week of September. That means that those 5 people that are appointed can take their seats, and by the end of October, present this board in the last week of October with completed bylaws.
Okay.
Then after that, with new bylaws, assuming the number of seats goes up, the new board can then present to us a slate of additional candidates to vote on after the new bylaws have been completed. So you have a 3-step process. 5 new members, 1 month to complete the bylaws themselves, and then the final step is the additional new members.
Okay,
Very
Sonia?
simple.
Sonia?
So I would think it would be really difficult to come in as a member on an advisory board to finish off a bylaw conversation that's been going on for quite some time. So I would like to suggest that this current advisory board to do 2 process. This current advisory board stay in place to finalize the bylaws. At the same time, we go through the recruitment that we started because we know we have vacancies, and we allow this board to finish the bylaws, and then we will appoint. And we should have it. I don't see why we can't have this the bylaw piece done. We may not have the whole new board in place in a month. At least get it done. I don't think we need to wait till the end of October, but I might be missing something.
So that's 2 different ideas. Paul?
Yeah, I kind of think Sonia's thinking the same lines that I'm really saying. So I think we're kind of in agreement. How we get there, if you meant reappointing the members that were there before to get it started, to get the work done, to finish the bylaws, and then fill the seats as needed. That's what I'm saying. That's what the motion really is. And so I would say, let's call the question.
Well, there was never a second, Paul. Oh, wait, there was a second.
Yes, there was. Martha seconded it.
I corrected myself. You may have heard that. All right,
Scott,
call the question.
Scott has his hand up.
Okay, but Paul called the question, so
All right, so.
I don't know. I don't know what the motion is. Sorry.
Okay, so I'll read. I don't mind. I can step back and let Scott ask his question or Gary ask his question for clarification. But let me just repeat what I think the motion is. That's going to get us there. Okay. Reappoint the folks that have expired their seat from the areas in which they represented. They put them to work as soon as they can to finish the bylaws. With the construct of 11 members total, 1 from Milwaukee Center, 2 from Milwaukee, 8 from unincorporated, for a total of 11, and let them complete the bylaws and then help do the interviews for the next members as written in the current draft bylaws, and have it done by October 31st.
So first off, we can clear up most of the bylaw issue right now. I'm fine with everything they've got except the membership. So
what do you mean?
I mean, we're talking about opening up the bylaws for review by a bunch of people who don't know anything about them.
No, that's not what I'm saying, Jim.
I wasn't asking you. This is what I'm hearing you. I hear people talking about. I said, so we've got most of the bylaws done already. Let's put aside those and talk about membership. Right now, there's nobody east of 205, for example. There needs to be somebody there east of 205. I'm sure there's probably an applicant east of 205. So we could put the bylaws behind us, most of them except for a couple. And that is the membership and the map, right? Is that right, Scott? Or Laura?
I apologize, Chair. I didn't perfectly understand that question, but maybe this helps to answer part of what you're asking. What I wanted to interject real quick, just so everybody's aware. So if the board direction was to quickly reappoint those existing or the immediately prior members, I think you just said this, Chair, maybe this is what you're getting at. There are currently no remaining east of 205 members on the DAB if we appoint that, because the one unincorporated at-large position, Sandy Griskowiak, is moving out of the district, and she resigned. So that position is empty. And then the 2 Happy Valley related positions are the 3 that we had on the. So what I'm simply saying is if you reappoint just to the existing membership just to finish the bylaws, you'll have nobody on the east side of the district representing that DAB. Just wanted to make sure it was very clear that that was the case.
So to clarify what I was saying, that the bylaws were almost done, right?
Yes.
I don't have a problem with the bylaws that were almost done. It got down to the size, the membership, and basically the map of representatives. Why don't we just do that?
I think that's what the work left to do is, Jim. It's the geography and it's the population numbers to make it up and split it up as fairly as possible.
And it's 9 or 11.
It's 11. That's my motion. And that's the second. It's 11. That's mathematically fair.
I frankly don't care the size, 9 or 11. So you made a motion 11. Sonia, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so my thinking is that I would like the current district advisory board to work out all these details. I don't want us to provide these details. I think we asked the citizen group to come together. They did a lot of hard work. Scott did some great work that we heard a lot of good public input that said that they really agreed with it. Let's let this group finalize the bylaws. I don't want to tell them what they're going to do as far as this many members or what the process is. Let them do that work. And at the same time, let's continue our recruitment, because we know that when these bylaws are done, we're going to need to appoint new members to the board. So let's have a parallel process. That's what I would support. I don't want to be too prescriptive.
That's what the motion is.
That's not the motion, right?
But that is what the motion is, essentially.
Essentially.
Essentially. I mean, yeah, we're not. As Sonia finished, we can't get this exact. The intention is clear.
So the motion, because I had to repeat back the motion. It's been moved and seconded that we reappoint the current membership. We still are missing a person off east of 205.
Yep.
So let's appoint one of those applicants to east of 205, which would only be fair.
Well, then,
and their job is to finish the bylaws. Paul?
So getting back to the earlier conversation, Sonia's recommendation as well, in order to expedite and finish it within the time frame you asked, Jim, and because the current DAB members are familiar with the remaining issues, it makes sense to use the remaining folks that were there to finish the work, expedite it, and we're not going to do anything that's going to handicap the Sunnyside area. But if you open it up to recruit someone from Sunnyside, you need to reopen it up to everyone, and that will slow the process down. If you want to make it the end of November, then we can do it your way. But if you want to expedite it, this is the fastest way to do it. That was trying to get to your desire to have this completed as soon as possible.
Well, I want to make something clear, though. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with doing what Sonia suggests. But but one thing you also suggested, Paul, that the membership that Milwaukee appoints, the bylaws are silent on that, and that no Board of Commissioners member is a member of that committee. That's all I care about.
Okay, fine. Whatever you care about is important, Jim. I get it.
Yeah. Well, I want to have this meeting over before October or November, so I was.
Could we call the question, please? Can we just?
Well, now we're not sure of the motion, Martha. What is the motion?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming.
One more time, I'll repeat the motion.
Okay.
Reappoint the previous DAB members to finish the bylaws, and then to finish the work. Meanwhile, go through the appointment process to fill the board, fill the seats, and have all the work done by October 31st.
All right.
Been moved and seconded, as Paul said. Any further discussion? Please poll us.
Okay. Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humberston,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
I could have done this an hour ago.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle.
Anything else on the agenda, Gary?
Yes, district administrator comments. I have none. Next is Board of Commissioner comments.
None.
Paul?
One clarification I left out in the motion as that was in the first motion, is that it would be an 11-member board.
I
I'm
think
a
that's
no.
a determination of the Blylaw folks to decide.
Yeah.
No, that was the purpose of the meeting here today, to get that settled. So that was, so
Don't make a motion. And let's see.
Then I'm a no, just so you know,
I'm a no.
Paul.
Okay.
I was a yes on what you said. I'm a no on this. The bylaw committee to figure this
How to
out.
get this settled? Do you want to get this all done? So I make a motion similar to my first one with the addition, only addition is to make it an 11-member board that is mathematically fair. That's it.
So I'm just process. We all agreed. What is the correct procedure? Scott.
Boy, you're really cutting out, Sonia.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's the correct procedure? Because we settled this issue.
I'm not.
Well, commissioners, with great respect, you've messed up your procedure multiple times tonight. So what you just approved is that we are reinstating all of the expired district advisory board members. They are going to finish their recommendation on the bylaws, bring it back to this Board of Commissioners by October 31st. That was the last motion made. Commissioner Savas did talk about an 11-member board, so you need to revisit that. And then basically the recruitments that are currently open were for specific seats, which means now we have to pause that, because if you change the bylaws, it will no longer be an active recruitment. So you're basically reversed yourself on your prior decision to hopefully have this open recruitment. So we need to pause on the open recruitment until you finish the bylaws, because we recruited for specific seats. Is that correct, Scott? Okay. Under the current
Yes,
bylaws.
sorry, Gary. Yes, that is correct. Yes.
That's why I tried to get the whole us to just say this is what it's going to be, and just appoint these people. So Paul, you had a motion.
Yeah. So I want to ask Scott a question. Scott, have you looked at the applications to see how geographically they are placed right now?
No, I don't have that information yet. I just got the update this afternoon that we had 12, and other than the existing members reapplying, I don't know who the new applicants, where they're from yet. We'll find that out, but I don't have that right now. I'm sorry.
Is it safe to say that relatively, if we use that existing, let's just say it's 12 by the end of the month, that we would have a quorum of the DAB, regardless of which model is used? That's probably fair, isn't it?
Well, under the existing bylaws, we need 5.
Right. You need 5.
Right, 5 of 9. So
Right.
5 would be our current quorum.
Right, and we have 5 already that we're reappointing. So we already have a quorum, so they can do their work. So we are ready to go, is what I'm saying. And then you have applications, so we can fill that. So I'll make the motion. We can get there to affirm what I said in my first motion, which there was a second, is make a motion to make it an 11-member board. 2 from Milwaukee, 1 from Milwaukee Center, and 8 from unincorporated, as mathematically defined.
Is there a second? Oh, there's no second. So let's just get these folks on a board and let them make that determination. And I'm fine with that. I mean, I support a 9, 11. I don't care, just so it's well represented.
Let's get it done. Let's get the motion. Let's get it
Paul,
done.
there was no second.
You could have. I'm just saying, we can get it done right now. You want to get it done? Let's get it done.
Well, I accept the bylaws as they are, except for the size of the board, which has to be decided, and being silent on who's elected or not elected.
You're going to instruct the board to design bylaws. You're setting them up for failure. You got to give them a number because they got to be able to divide it up geographically. You need a number.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question on this.
There is no question.
There is no.
Oh, I'm just going to ask that we stop debate because this is productive. We made a decision. I think we can adjourn the meeting.
Yes.
All someone needs to do is make a second. And we're done.
Well, no one seconded it. So the meeting is, anything else, Gary, for the good of the order? Commissioner comments?
Any commissioners have comments before we adjourn?
All right, seeing none, you got your, Scott, you know what you're doing?
I think so. I believe we do, yes.
I do, I'll work with Scott.
Yeah, I did actually, I did have one question. I wasn't going to interject this because you were wrapping up, but are we, the reappointment motion to just reappoint those that were on the board, which would not include the person who resigned from the east side, would that include the commissioner who was serving on the board? Because that part I wasn't clear about. That's the part I was kind of saying I wasn't sure if I had clarity.
Commissioner's a liaison.
It doesn't matter to me. Just as long as we have a quorum. And if I'm a voting member, it's only that short term of time to finish the bylaws.
So is he counted as one of the members? So that would give us more than the positions you have suggested?
That was, the commissioner was filling a seat that was one of the vacant east side positions, just because that was the one that was available when that appointment was made. So that is one of the positions being referred to.
So that means we have an additional person who could be appointed. All right, so we've made the decision, fill the board. I'm still a little bit,
So
Gary,
Paul,
you know what we're doing.
Paul remains as a voting member of the DAB because he was a voting member before his vote term expired. So Paul remains as a voting member as one of these five, yes.
Okay.
For the short term.
Okay, I'm clear now. Thank you.
All right, anything else?
That's it.
Let's do this again tomorrow night. Thanks. We're adjourned.